What's going on, guys? My name is Mark Anthony Joe. Welcome back to the Good Omen Podcast. I am super grateful and super excited that you're here. It is my hope, it is my prayer that you get something practical, something useful, something valuable, something inspirational, something from this episode, and I'm sure that you will. Before we get into today's show, I just want to remind everybody to please leave a rating for the show. I see the numbers and of downloads that we get per episode, and I see the number of ratings we have, and it's like, man, you know what I mean? Yeah, why you guys gotta be so disappointing? Okay, leave us a rating real quick. I know that you guys listen to the show consistently, and that means a lot to me. But help us out with the algorithm. Leave a rating for the show. Subscribe on YouTube. But cool. Without further ado, I want to get right into today's episode. I have a guest that I'm really excited to talk to today. My man Kevin. Hi, welcome, man. What's your last name?
McCulloch.
Kevin McCulloch. Kevin McCulloch is, I was just explaining to him before we went live that the way that I find guests for the show is, I just talk to people. They're acquaintances of some capacity. And a lot of times, like I like to have meaningful conversations with people. And so I'll, ask people about themselves, or I'll get chatting with them, and they'll reveal a detail about themselves that I think is super interesting. And I have to resist diving in and asking more questions, because I think to myself, oh, this person might be a good person to have on the show. And I want to hear it for the first time. And there's a lot of things that I hope to hear for the first time today from Kevin. Kevin, your title for the St. Louis Cardinals is mental performance coach.
That's right.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That's
amazing. He told me that, and I was like, wait a minute, hold on. And I wanted to jump in so quickly. But I think that's amazing, dude. A mental performance coach. So I have lots of questions. But the first one is just like a general, just let's lay the groundwork of how does one get there? Did you go to college knowing that you wanted to be a mental performance coach, or, I'm really curious of how, where do you apply to be a and what qualifies you to be a mental performance coach?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of different avenues that people travel to get there. It's, recently, there's a certification that you can become a certified mental performance coach, CMPC. That's not a requirement for the role in Major League Baseball, but I think it's moving in that direction.
Yeah.
For me, I think it was a very unconventional path, which is seems to be the way that I travel.
Yeah.
In general.
Same.
Right. So I did my undergraduate in international business. So I majored in Spanish and marketing. Did not have any interest in psychology or coaching. It was really about marketing, messaging, management, strategy. I liked all of those things.
Yeah.
And worked a little bit in business along the way. And the story gets kind of long, I would say, but I just had an anniversary on Saturday. And so Saturday was the 17th anniversary of when I almost died.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy moly. Let's hear about it. And also, don't worry about long stories, dude. Podcasts, that's the greatest thing about podcasts is that it is long form content. So we want to hear the story.
Yeah. So it's, up until that point in my life, I was business oriented, like I said, sales, marketing, finding ways to convince people to make purchase decisions. And I got to a point when I was, I guess this was 2005, so I was 26. I wasn't really sure what my purpose was in that role. And I felt empty in that purpose. I didn't really understand what I was going to be doing for the next 29 years, 39 years of my life until I retired.
Yeah.
And it all kind of seemed pointless. So I ended up selling everything I owned at that time, and I had a friend of a friend who lived in the Czech Republic in Prague. And so I sold everything I owned, and I bought a one-way ticket and flew over to Prague.
That's sick.
Yeah.
I mean, it's desperate times call for desperate measures. Sounds like a good adventure.
It was a great adventure.
Yeah.
When I was in undergrad, I studied abroad in Spain,
Mm-hmm.
and I did an internship there in Spain, in Madrid. And I wanted to get back to Spain to work, but they had really tight employment restrictions for non-citizens. So my plan was to go to Prague and then kind of make my way down somehow.
Sneak in, yeah.
Get back to Spain. But I got over there and I really enjoyed it, so I ended up staying. And I was there for 2 years. I started working for this language company. We did English training, English teaching, high-level English, so business executives, presentations, helping them work within the European zone.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was working for the company, I was also kind of observing and assessing how the business worked. Mm-hmm. And I saw a lot of opportunities to help them as a business. So I started consulting with them. And one of the trends that became known was that there were going to be these new regulations for aviation English proficiency. So air traffic controllers and pilots within the European zone had to have a certain level of English proficiency to work. But there weren't really any products on the market to help with that. So we started developing an aviation English course, and then ended up selling that to the airport in Prague, and then ended up selling that to an airport in Azerbaijan, in a city called Baku. So after we did that, me and this other guy, Dave, would go for 2 weeks at a time and teach the aviation English course at the airport in Baku. Yeah. Which is wild.
Yeah. I don't even know where that is.
Most people don't.
Yeah.
Most people don't. So, to the west is the Caspian Sea.
Yeah.
To the east is the Caspian Sea. To the west is Armenia. North is Russia.
Yeah.
South is Iran.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Kind of Middle East, but
kind of Eurasia. Yeah. Middle East, Asia.
Yeah.
Really interesting place. Oil oligarch, huge wealth disparity. So I dropped in there, and by this time it's 2007. I'm 28, and I'm going back and forth there 2 weeks at a time. While I'm over there, during one of my teaching lessons, blood vessel ruptures in my brain.
Oh, wow.
And I'm, significantly incapacitated and have, some degree of paralysis down the right side of my body. And they take me to the hospital and find ways to get all of that under control. And they weren't able to diagnose what was happening. They could tell me that there was bleeding in my brain, but they didn't know why, and they didn't know what to do.
Yeah, it wasn't America.
It wasn't America. There was a completely different medical system.
Yeah.
And over there, it was really like there wasn't this patient's rights, informed consent type of practice. It was more
they're just going to do what they want to do.
We're the ones that are knowledgeable and educated, and we'll tell you what's going to happen. But they didn't know what was going on. And so I ended up, for I think it was 7 or 8 days, I just kind of laid, not knowing what was happening, not knowing if I was going to live or die. Mm-hmm. And I really got to a point of letting go, just letting go of control, trusting that whatever happened, I was going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And I somehow just reached that point. Yeah. And everything was okay. And I wasn't ecstatic, but I was calm. Yeah. And because I was looking around the room that I was in, nothing that was there, belonged to me. I just had some luggage. I was all alone. And I'm like, well, maybe I die now. Maybe this is it. And I couldn't do anything about the situation. There was no force. And I was such a doer, right? I was a drive hard, aggressive, get it done, apply force, shape the world type of guy. And in this situation, there was nothing to do. And so I just kind of, felt easy about it all. Eventually I got back to Prague and then back to the States. But I had to have brain surgery for the condition. And so even in the brain surgery, there was an amount of a percentage that I was going to die.
Risk, yeah. And
then there was a risk that I would have irreversible brain damage. So going into that surgery again, I really just had to let go. Kind of freaked my mom out a little bit because I wasn't afraid.
Yeah.
Came out of that, and then I'm faced with this kind of 9 to 12 month recovery period. And so within a matter of 2 weeks, probably, 14 days, I went from being 28, living in Prague, flying back and forth to Baku, living this very, romantic lifestyle, independent, adventurous lifestyle, to being incapacitated, without any freedom, without any capability, in my childhood bedroom, my mom taking care of me, and 9 to 12 months of time ahead that I couldn't speed up.
Yeah.
I only could sit, I only could lay, I only could rest and sleep. There was no doing.
Really?
There was no way to make that go faster.
Yeah.
And so my whole life was gone. Everything that I knew, that I identified with, that made me me, was gone. And I had to build my entire life back from that, to the point of eventually getting a job at Starbucks.
Yeah.
Right? So here I was, this guy who was
almost 30 years old,
double major,
formerly successful
business consultant, living in Europe. And now I'm handing out, lattes in the drive-through window at Starbucks, working with 18-year-olds. And I remember there was a time I opened up the window and there was this guy I had accounting class with, and I think he was in a BMW or Mercedes or something. And we were in business school together. I pop out and I handed him his coffee. And he just kind of looked at me like, weren't we in accounting together?
Yeah.
How come you're not working at Price Waterhouse or something? Like, why are you? But you talked about resisting, I had to resist a feeling like I needed to explain myself to him, right? Like, apologize for my condition. Yeah. Apologize for where I was in my life. And it was very humbling, but it again got me to a place of acceptance. Yeah. This is where I'm at. And I'm going to apply myself on a day-by-day basis and work towards a vision of what I want to, become, but not being able to get ahead of myself. So to make the story shorter, eventually I did go back to business school to get my MBA at Wash U. I went for 2 weeks and then I dropped out. Because the school was great, the program was great, my classmates were amazing, the professors were awesome, and I was like, this is exactly what I thought it was going to be. I mean, I spent 1.5 years preparing, taking the GMAT, trying to get into the school. I don't know what it's ranked now, but at the time it was.
It's top 20 in the country.
Yeah, and that's how it was at the time, right? So it was a big goal of mine. Before the injury event. Yeah. And then I get there and I'm there for 2 weeks and I'm like, this is not it. This is not why I'm alive. I did not live through this to be this strategy consultant. Yeah. So then I'd ask myself, well, why am I alive? Yeah. And what I came to understand, there were two principles. One was to be in service, and the other was to give and receive love. Mm-hmm. I didn't know at the time how those were going to manifest, but that was very clear to me. That came very clear to me. And I understood I would either become a teacher or a therapist. And I could not picture myself kind of operating within the academic structure of a school, so I decided to choose therapist. So I went back to school and got a master's and became a psychotherapist. So now I'm a state licensed psychotherapist and had a counseling practice and worked in that regard. And that was kind of the initial movement towards becoming this mental performance coach, which is even a little bit further down the line. Yeah. But that's kind of how things got started for me.
First of all, I as you were talking, I couldn't resist like smiling.
How come?
Because that letting go, you know, similar to you in that drive-through window, when I came home from prison, I had always been cool. I'd always been popular. I'd always, you know, and I was so ashamed of having, you know, of having, just having gone to prison in the first place, and, you know, having that stain, so to speak. And yeah, I mean, I came home from prison and I built a decently successful business my first year home, and I remember there was this one interaction that I'll never forget. But the first person that I told that I had gone to prison, it's like, hey, you know, I just got home from prison. I've only been home from prison for a year, and blah blah blah. And, you know, I was afraid that this person wouldn't want to associate with me anymore. You know, that I legitimately in my head, and I remember her. She was just silent when I told her, and the first question that she asked was like, well, Mark, how did you accomplish so much if you've only been home? Like, I don't understand. How did you accomplish so much in such a short amount of time? And I didn't know what to say, but my response to her was like, I don't know, I guess I just don't waste any days. And I was smiling because the mindset like that I had to adopt during that time, you kind of hinted at it, but, you know, you have to really accept, like, this is just where I'm at. Like, you can't be upset about it. You can't, you know, you're just here. And I spent a lot of time developing an image of the man that I thought I had the potential to be. And every day I just like asked myself the question, what can I do today to get a little bit closer to that? And so you literally said that, but you're like, you know, I have this idea of who I could become, but, you know, this is where I'm at today, and I just got to work at it every day until I get there. And I think it's so powerful to get to that point of like just complete acceptance of your circumstances are your circumstances. Think about where you would like to go, and like nothing else matters. Like nothing. Like in today's world, I think it's fashionable to like be a victim and, oh, poor me. And, you know, but like every moment that you spend complaining about the reason why you might be where you are, or poor me, I had this injury, poor me, I come from these parents or this neighborhood or whatever, this socioeconomic status, poor me, or I've been discriminated. It doesn't matter. The world doesn't care. The world doesn't care that you had an injury. The world, if you want to create the life that you think that you have the opportunity to create or potential to create, the only thing that matters is like what you're going to do to make that happen. Like nobody else is going to come in and be like, oh man, I'm so sorry that, you know, you went to prison. Here, let me create this life for you. Like, or let me just gift it to you. So you hinted at that. And then, the other thing that really made me, smile is I'm wondering, like, when you had this moment and you're in the hospital room, and, you know, I would imagine before the acceptance, before the really, I think about it as submission, right? But before the acceptance of the reality of the situation, I would imagine that there was some like resisting, like some at least mental resisting of like, no, I got to get out of here. I got to, this, that, and the third, some sense of urgency.
Of course.
And I am wondering, like, is there a spiritual element to, sort of the realization? Is there I don't know, like some people, it made me think of, sort of God and religion and that stuff. Or is this just a philosophical realization that you've had? I'm curious about that.
Yeah. I mean, and to clarify, and this is another interesting part of the story, for whatever reason, I was not in the hospital. I was in my apartment.
Oh, wow.
And there was some sort of like a triage medical setup in my apartment. So there was IV bags kind of hanging from coat hangers. Mm-hmm. And these plainclothes nurses would come over and administer shots.
Oh, wow.
In my butt.
Wow.
And with no clue what they were giving me, because it was all written in kind of Russian Cyrillic.
Yeah.
And no ability to communicate with them, ask them what was going on, what the drugs were.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just kind of laid up in
1,000%
my apartment
helpless
with like a little, hospital facade going on there. So it was stranger than strange, mm-hmm. right? And of course, I was an adventurer, a problem solver, go-getter. I was going to figure it out, mm-hmm. right? But this is also 2007, 17 years ago. I mean, I had a little phone like this, no internet and apps.
An iPhone,
I mean, it was horrible, and I'm on the other side of the planet. And so, I was communicating with my parents, and they were talking to the State Department and, trying to figure out how to get me home. And people were worried about if I flew, if the air pressure would exacerbate the bleeding, mm-hmm. Or if I was going to take a train, that would take forever. If I was going to take a boat, that would take forever.
Yeah.
So it was like, how do we get him home? And so I'm just laying in that room. And then when nobody was there giving me shots or administering meds, I was there by myself, mm-hmm. which also was strange.
Yeah.
Right? Like thinking back, sometimes I'm like, did this even happen to me?
Yeah.
And I asked my parents, and they remind me like, oh yeah, it happened. We were terrified. And I think the other component was I was there teaching, English is not the second language even. Russian is the second language. So there's very little English spoken. So even to communicate with the people who were helping me, I couldn't talk to them about what I was feeling or thinking or my fears or get consolation. I was just really laying in my thoughts, silent.
Yeah.
Not verbalizing. We talked earlier about writing things down. I mean, just everything was just doing this. And I can't remember what day it was, but there was a point in time when I felt awash with a sensation or an idea that it's okay if you die. It didn't come to be in words, but the words that I used to represent it, which aren't precise, but the words would be, the you that is beyond you will continue. Mm-hmm. Beyond Kevin. That's what came to me.
Yeah.
And from that moment, I just felt easy because it was like, look,
it's all good.
If this stops, somehow, some way, whatever, I don't know, continues.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's the part I think that was terrifying for my mom, because obviously she and I live in this story mm-hmm. of us here in Earth.
Yeah.
And the idea of losing me, that did not bring her any comfort.
Yeah.
But to me,
Yeah, you
here,
trying to explain it, Mom?
yeah,
it's fine.
it's fine.
If I die,
yeah.
the me
I will
beyond me is gonna be
continue.
fine.
But for me, however that happened, it just brought me so much comfort, and
It's amazing.
I think that was a huge part of the journey, because if I think about what I know now in the nervous system, in physiology, and healing, inflammation, all of these things, I think I was so chill and so relaxed going into that surgery, and so chill and so relaxed during that surgery, and so chill and so relaxed coming out of that surgery, that I really set myself up
For success.
to be successful, because I wasn't entering it into such an elevated state of fear and urgency.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot to be said about what fear and stress and anxiety do to us, and how they affect almost all the experiences and interactions that we have with people on a day-to-day basis. But something that has stood out to me over the years, and that I think is, a superpower is, I'm not afraid to die, and I think that it sounds like you can relate. I'm not afraid to die. And then once you lose your fear of the ultimate fear, right? Not much else really scares you that much. Failure being the most significant thing that comes to my mind, because I'm not afraid to fail either. And it has become a bit of a superpower, because I think I've reached a similar realization as you, in the sense that I gave my life to contributing to the world in a positive way, to service. And I like what you said of giving and receiving love. But for me, I live with this like looming sense of indebtedness. Like I owe God, I owe my parents, I owe my community, I owe myself. And that's what drives me every day. I feel like I gotta give. And so, yeah, I mean, the losing the fear of death and the fear of failure has really just given me a freedom, and it's become a superpower, because I'm no longer driven by money or, success or the approval of my friends or the approval of my family and all these things. And so anyway, I bring all this up to ask you, do you think, is there a way to give somebody that? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, you're a psychotherapist, you're a mental performance coach. I know it's been a superpower for me. I'd like to hear your opinion on you losing that fear and how it's affected your life. But then also, as a secondary question, do you think that you can give somebody that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, like, that's been such a powerful superpower, like you said.
It is a superpower, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
100%. And the experience I went through, I would never wish upon anyone. Right. But at the same time, it was the greatest gift of my life.
Greatest.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to have that pain in order to get there. I think you can learn it. But I think the way that I found it was kind of like the rapid fire supercharged way to get there.
Yeah.
Like I really was picked up by my ankle and shook and put down in a completely, different way. Giving it to somebody, I think there's introducing the concept, and I think there's illuminating the opportunities, right? But I think the individuals are themselves needing to walk that path, right? So I was reflecting a little bit on what I do for this conversation and trying to really understand it a little bit more deeply.
Yeah.
You know, doing it is one thing and understanding what is it that happens, because most of what I do is I sit, I listen,
Yeah.
I say words, and that's it.
That's it. That's all you do.
That's all I do. I sit, I listen, and I say words.
Yeah.
And somehow that's really powerful.
It is powerful.
And so it's like, what is that? What's happening in that interchange?
Yeah.
And so I think there is a way to create safety, first and foremost, that encourages trust, which opens up vulnerability. And in the vulnerability is intimacy and connection. And in that intimacy and connection, there's a listening, and there's an understanding, and there's a being heard and being seen, right? Which is so powerful. And through that, then there's opportunities to grab little bits and pull it apart and open it up, right? So without getting to that vulnerable, intimate, open place first, the little bits aren't really there.
They don't reveal them. Yeah.
Because we're operating on, you said earlier, I don't really get into the small talk. You know, a lot of times we're just operating on that frequency up here, where we're just saying things, and I say things, and
That
you
don't
say
really mean
things, and it's
anything.
programmatic, and we go about our day. But how do we get down into the stuff that's real, right? In so much around failure, disappointment, embarrassment, shame, rejection, right? At its core, it all comes back to that existential threat, that fear of death,
Yeah.
right? Because if I'm rejected, I did a lot of work with attachment theory, right? You familiar with attachment?
I'm not. Is it like detaching yourself from?
Well, it's kind of like when a child is born, the relationship with the mother, or the relationship with the most closest caregiver,
Yeah.
right? That bond, especially for mammals, is necessary for survival,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah, I think I've heard of this. And is it when they disconnect, they're X percent more likely to die young?
Right.
Yeah.
We you know, if you leave like a little baby in the woods, we're not alligators, right? So like we need that. And so we have these ways of attaching, and that creates the safety, right? And that creates the bond that we need to feel safe, to then grow and explore and develop. And so we have to find ways to create that safety to get to that depth, because it's scary.
And you're talking about even as adults.
Especially as adults.
Yes.
Right? Because if I fail, and this happens a lot on the mental performance side of things as well, right? Like it impacts us. We don't code it as such. We code it as the story, right? We interpret it as the story. But what's really happening is, if I'm rejected by my people, if I'm rejected by my parents, if I'm rejected by my tribe, I'm alone.
Yeah.
If I'm alone, I die, right? So if I'm embarrassed, if I'm ashamed, if I'm disappointing, if I'm a failure, right? I'm shunned, I'm pushed out, and in that I die. And so those feelings around those events, they may attach to the story of, I missed the shot to win the game, my business failed, I was in prison, right? Like that's that story.
Yeah.
But where it hits is on that kind of primal, all the way back to, if I'm not connected. And that's why community is so powerful.
It is so
right?
powerful. Yeah.
There's so much safety and community and strength, because you are seen, you are understood, you are held, you are supported, right? That's the opposite.
Yeah.
And so when we feel that shame, we feel alone. And the challenge is we impose that on ourselves, right? So I talk a lot about body language and intentional action. And so when we feel shame, we don't make eye contact. Our head goes down. Our shoulders close in. We isolate ourselves. We pull away because we project onto others what we believe that they're experiencing within us.
Yeah.
Right? And that story remains true unless we challenge it. So then when we neutralize shame, right, we neutralize shame by making eye contact. Does this person really think about me the way that I think about myself?
Mm-hmm.
And I can see that that's not true. So when we come together in this way, we can neutralize shame. And I can learn I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm acceptable.
I can do that for you.
And we can do that for each other.
Yeah.
Right? So that's that whole process that so much of that's what's scary about extending ourselves, right? Trying.
Yeah.
Because it's safe to stay in, right? And not extend ourselves. You don't fail.
Yeah.
Never open a business. You'll never have a failed business.
Yeah.
Right? Never move away because then you'll never have to move back and say you couldn't make it. Never ask somebody out on a date and they'll never say no.
Yeah.
Right? Safe.
Yeah.
But then you don't get the experience. And so much of, I think, the performance coaching is really about how do we manage the success and failure, and how do we have a clear and resounding sense of character that persists outside of that volatility.
Yeah. So for people that have liberated themselves or who have been liberated from this fear of death, though, help me understand, because it seems like you have a thorough understanding of this, and I don't. I just kind of intuitively understand it. But help me understand how then that parlays into our lives in this superpower-esque way, right? Like we take chances, and it's not like, are we also liberated from equating the embarrassment, the shame, the failure with death? Is that why now? Wow, I'll take chances and I'll start the business and I'll hop from this job and I'll switch paths in life and I'll go all in, and I'm not motivated by these external things but by more intrinsic satisfaction. Is that why? Is because losing that fear of death has liberated me from the fear of these things that I also equate with death?
I think it's very complex.
Yeah, it is.
And I think it's not, for me, from my experience, and earlier we were talking about writing things down and remembering and forgetting. Mm-hmm. And just like, as we're talking about this, I can think about it in a certain way and I can explain to you how I think about it. It doesn't mean that that's on the forefront of my mind 24/7.
Yeah.
Right? Some days I wake up and it's just Tuesday and I don't even remember that story I told you. Mm-hmm. About everything that's happened to me in my life. I don't even remember that whole concept that I'm not afraid of this and I'm eternal. Mm-hmm. I wake up on Tuesday and I'm like, holy shit, everything's on fire and this is horrible and I'm not going to make it through the day and this probably isn't going to work. And I'm running around like crazy.
Yeah.
Because I forget what I know.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, it's about how can I set up these processes to remember what I know. Yeah. Remind myself of that. How do I understand what is, and this is some of the work that I do with the clients that I work with, but trying to map out the timeline or the movement between these different states. So when I'm at my most clear, understanding, balanced, place, what is that like? What are my thoughts, feelings, and behaviors when I'm here? When I'm at 10 out of 10 crystal clarity and balance? Mm-hmm. And then what's it like when I'm at 0 out of 10? When I have no concept of remembering any of that and I'm totally lost in the minute, disaster-filled, fear-induced details of the day. Yeah. And I'm a little boy again. And I'm terrified that people don't like me. Yeah. Right? or this isn't going to work out, or something's going to be a failure and everyone's going to laugh at me. And what are my thoughts, feelings, and behaviors over here?
Yeah.
And then what does the progression between those two states look like? So can I now watch myself in that movement and identify where I'm at based on what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and what I'm doing, so that I can see it? And in seeing that, I can remember that I don't live in 2 out of 10.
Yeah.
That's just now. Because as I get closer to 0 out of 10, that becomes more and more like eternal truth.
This is just who I am.
This is who I am.
Yeah.
I felt this way forever,
Yeah.
and it's going to be this way forever. I can't even remember what 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
I don't even know that story exists. It's like now is horrible, and it's always going to be horrible. The more that we move towards that 0 out of 10, the less access we have to the resources of 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
So if I can see that roadmap, and it's not perfect, but I mean, if you can see the roadmap, we all will have our tendencies.
Yeah.
And so you're like, okay, but you have to have the roadmap first, and then you're like, I'm right here right now.
Yeah.
And then from that point, you say, do I have an inventory of activities to engage in that I know that move me back over here?
It's about the thoughts, feelings, habits,
Yep.
behaviors.
Yep.
And yeah, one of my mentors, he says the work comes before the belief, but basically you have to do these things and trust that, the feeling will come after, or action, what does he say? Motion precedes emotion,
Yep.
So you'll feel like you're a 10 out of 10 if you just do the things that the 10 out of 10 version of you does.
Yep.
That's really interesting, huh? For me, I feel like I have to bring myself back to. I have to remind myself every day. Like, I guess it goes hand in hand with what you were talking about. Like, you just don't remember. Like that story, it's not on forefront. Or some days you wake up, it's just Tuesday.
Yep.
Every day when I wake up, I remind myself. And I had a realization at one point that. Do you think it's fair to say that the vast majority of people are not happy? They're not at peace?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
It's hard to know. Yeah.
In my head anyway.
Yeah.
I say, because what we're talking about, this acceptance, I have referred to it for years as peace. I think that's what most people want. They just want to get to a place where they're okay with themselves. But they still have stuff that they want to do. And, it's just, but every day you're just content and not in a complacent kind of way, but that's how I feel. And so I imagine that the vast majority of people do not experience that, at least here in the United States. I don't, you can almost feel it when you interact with somebody. Like when I interact with you, like I know that, whether it's spiritual, mental, emotional, you just know that you've done some work that has produced this external coolness, and it's tangible. The energy, you could feel it. And the vast majority of people, and I interact with hundreds of people a day, I just don't get that from them. There's this anxiety, there's a sense of urgency, there's this, and I imagine that the vast majority of people, they don't experience that, but I think that everybody wants that. That's what we all want.
Yes.
And I have this thing I say, happy is not the default, and what I realized was, like, I think for a long time, the reason why I didn't have that was because I would wake up every day and I'd almost be like indignant at the fact that, like, I just wasn't happy that my life, and I guess I assumed that in the absence of anything coming in and disturbing my happy, that I should just by default be happy. And I don't think that that's the case. I don't think it's the case for anybody. I think restlessness or unhappiness, or the opposite of this peace that I'm talking about, I think that that's the default, in that unless you wake up every day and take some intentional steps to bring yourself to happiness, or bring yourself to that peace, that perspective, that you are going to by default be unhappy or be restless or be discontented.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really does go hand in hand with what you're saying about, like, you forget, you don't always remember. And I think that a life hack that has really worked for me in remaining in this, in this piece, I guess, is creating a habit. And just like what you're saying is, when I feel furthest away from peace, a lot of times I've broken away from my morning routine.
That's right.
Which is, it's a morning routine. And I hate saying that, because morning routines are so like trendy on everybody has a morning routine, but it is because my days start in the morning, and I just need to do it at the beginning of my day, so that I can present myself to the world in an intentional way, that I'm not showing up on accident but on purpose. So everything that you're saying is really reminding me of some of these realizations that I think that I've had, and I've never been able to articulate them the way that you are now, which is amazing.
Well, I think that makes so much sense, because if we don't approach the day, just like competition, if we don't approach the competition with structure and intention, I was just having this conversation with someone today, we leave ourselves more vulnerable to be reacting to the circumstance of the environment than being kind of intentionally responsive, right? So if I don't wake up and kind of set the table for I don't know what the day has in store, but if I don't set the table for the day, if I don't set the intention, if I don't start the day with clarity and trying to understand what I'm trying to accomplish today, who is the me that I'm going to bring forward? Right? I don't know what's going to happen, but if I start the day with that framework, then at least I know what I'm doing going forward.
It's one of a few different outcomes, and I'm going to be prepared for all three of them.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. And if I don't start there, I might have the same events take place, but I'm going to be much more lost.
You're going to be unprepared for that.
Unprepared, and I'm going to be reactive to it. And so those circumstances are going to move me around, and I'm going to be moved by them. And I'm going to be lost in them, as opposed to saying, I'm starting my day. When you were talking about notebooks, I went and grabbed this. This is something that I kind of, developed for myself. And this is something that I use. And it has like a little AM practice and a PM practice. And I just created it for myself, and I go through here every day. And so one of the things that I do, I have I write down 3 things of gratitude, which I think is, pretty common practice. But then I have this little box here, and it says values. And so what I do is I think about the day ahead, right? So today I met somebody, for a home project. I'm preparing to go on this trip. I'm coming here to do this podcast. I'm meeting some friends. So I'm thinking about what the day has in store that I can anticipate. And so based on that, what are the values of me? We are like very multifaceted, complex beings, right? There's lots of different versions of ourselves. There's the me that might go to, a friend's daughter's 8-year-old birthday party. And there's the me that's going to go to meet with the accountant for the business. And there's the me that's going to go spend the afternoon with my 75-year-old dad. Like, there's a lot of different me's out there that can show up. And so I try to anticipate those events. And it's like, what are the values of me that I want to bring forward today? So on this day, I wrote down abundance, generosity, presence, enthusiasm, spaciousness, confidence, determination, love. That's not the same every day, right? But I try to, and then ask myself, what does that expression of me look like?
What does that look like?
Based on what I'm anticipating coming forward.
Yeah.
And so it just, there's this one idea one time that that stuck with me, and it was like, you think about somebody who's performing like a symphony concert, and we have these amazing instruments, but we wake up and step on stage to perform a concert without even tuning the instrument.
Cold.
Every day.
Mm-hmm.
And we just act like it's going to work, and we just throw it out there. We don't warm up. We don't check the sound. We don't make any tweaks or adjustments. We just slam a Red Bull, get in, turn on talk radio, and get right into rush hour traffic, and just
wing it.
Hopefully we're going to have a good day. It's like, that's not a good way to start the day.
That's not how to do it.
That's not a good way to start the day.
Hopefully it's going to be a good day. Like,
let's just jack it up and get right into that stress zone.
Yeah.
And start bouncing around like a pinball. And hopefully we can make it through to nighttime when we can shut it down and get some comfort.
Man.
I
love this stuff so much. I want to back up a little bit because you mentioned when you were talking about the me at 0 and the me at 10. It's required. It should go without saying, but it's required for you to use that tool. Mm-hmm. That you need to take some time to sit and self-assess.
Yep.
You know what I mean? A certain amount of self-awareness and patience and honesty, brutal honesty with yourself is required in order for you to even gain access to this tool.
Yep.
And that's one. And then with you just now talking about values, I used to teach this course in prison, and part of it was about teaching the guys about values. In my opinion, a lot of the reason that a lot of guys go to prison is because they grow up in environments where their community values that are incompatible with the values of society. It's not that in their head, it's not a matter of right and wrong. It's a matter of values, and if you can just sort of bring it to their attention. Hey, I always used to open it up with, hey, before I came to prison, if you had asked me what's more important to you, money or freedom, I would have knee-jerk reaction. I would have told you freedom. But every single day I risk my freedom to make money, or what's more important to you, your family or your friends? Obviously, everybody's going to say your family, but every single day I neglected my family to be with my friends. And so I would try to show the guys like that your behavior is the truest indication of what is important to you, what you value. But I say all that to say that you bringing up values is awesome too, but that also is even identifying those requires a certain level of brutal honesty with yourself, because everybody's gonna, if you say what's important to you, everybody has the same values because we all live in the same place and we're all taught that we should value these things. But what's really important to you requires the self-assessment. It requires patience. It requires honesty. And I'm wondering, because both of those tools, like you're knowing what your values are, is also a very important, very valuable tool. It's so practical. It's so much more practical than people, I think. Because if you really identify your values and you can decide what they are, they're not just like, they don't just happen on accident. You decide this is what I'm going to value. Once you decide and you have this list, well, then on a day-to-day basis, on a moment-by-moment basis, you're in a situation and you're at a crossroads, and you could either go right or you could go left. But to go left would value this more than this. So I think it's important not only to identify what your core values are, but then also you have to list them in order of importance to you. Because I'll say, like, okay, an example in our culture right now that we're seeing a lot is the inclusivity and meritocracy. Like we have a lot of DEI initiatives that the intent is good, right? But there could be situations where, like, now the quality of, let's say, the standard that's held in a business is going down because we're accepting people that aren't most qualified for a job, or so you have to decide in that moment, like, which do I want? You're making a decision. And I think our society, with this specific example, they get all up in arms. If you value meritocracy more, well, then you hate people, or what I try to help people see is like you can value them both, you just can't value them both the same amount. You know, so values is very practical, but again, but both of these, knowing your values, your core values, understanding the habits, the behaviors, the thoughts, the feelings that you have when you're at a 0 and when you're at a 10, they require the self-assessment. Is there one in particular that you think is like a good gateway to self-assessment? How does one get there? Because I think I just don't think that, I don't know many people that have taken the time to think about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if I asked you, Jake, you know, at 0 out of 10, what are your behaviors and feelings and mental habits? And at 10 out of 10, he's not going to know. He's going to be like, man, I never thought about that before. So how do we get, because your life, the quality of your life experience, I think it's undeniable. It skyrockets with this level of self-awareness. And it's nothing around you actually has to change. The circumstances might not change at all, but you are exponentially happier. You're more fulfilled. Your life has filled you up, and you just are just floating through it. And all that you did was think. You didn't do anything else. You just thought some things. And so, yeah, I'm wondering, like, because now we're getting into, I'm gonna start asking you a little bit about how you apply all this stuff as a mental performance coach for one of the biggest major league franchises in the country. But yeah, for the general people, like, how do we get more people? Because one of the questions that I had written down for you was, is there a need for this type of mental recalibration to take place at scale? That's basically what I'm getting at. Is there a need? And I think it's undeniable. There is a need. So how do we do that? How do we get people to slow down, ask themselves some meaningful questions, and then get the answers and then use them? I think once they get the answers, they use them. But
yeah. I think the most visible way is to start at the level of behavior.
Yeah.
Right? Am I doing the things that I want to do? Am I not doing the things that I don't want to do? Right? I think that's as simple as it is. I tell myself I'm going to wake up at 7. There's a great clip from Conor McGregor about this. I don't know if you've ever seen that one.
I don't think I have.
Oh, he's just, he's talking about self-esteem, right? Self-esteem is when we are living in congruence with our values, when we feel like we can do what it is that we want to do.
Yeah.
I tell myself I'm going to wake up at 7. I wake up at 7. That feels good. That gives me a little bit in the bucket of you can do what you want to do, right? There's a point over there. You tell yourself you're going to wake up at 7. You don't wake up at 7. Okay, now we're subtracting a little bit. You said you were going to do this. You didn't do it.
Yeah.
That takes away a little bit of that esteem. And so where is our belief? Where is our confidence coming from that we can do what we say we want to do?
The evidence.
It's all day, pluses and minuses.
Subtractions, right? or withdrawals and deposits.
You don't just, have all of this like that. You build up to it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think at the level of behavior, there's thoughts and there's feelings, but those tend to be invisible. You experience them internally, but at the level of behavior, you're able to measure it, right? So the example I tend to use is ice cream, right? I like ice cream. It's delicious. Makes me happy. I also tend to eat ice cream when I'm feeling sad and when I'm feeling lonely.
Same.
Right? Because sadness and loneliness is an uncomfortable, unpleasant emotion for me, I also have a tendency to avoid awareness that I'm experiencing that. So I will be sad and I will be lonely, but I won't let myself consciously know that I'm sad and lonely because I don't like being sad and lonely.
Yeah.
So there's a lagging period of me being sad and lonely where I don't let myself know that I am. But sometimes when I'm sad and lonely, I eat ice cream. And so sometimes while I'm eating ice cream, or while I'm thinking about eating ice cream, or while I'm at the store looking at ice cream, I ask myself, are you sad right now? And in that moment, I realize that I am, because of the ice cream.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't because I felt it in my body. It wasn't because I was having thoughts about the things I was sad about. It was because I was engaging in the behavior that's attached to the emotion.
Ooh.
And so I can watch myself, and not even, I mean, sometimes I'll finish the ice cream, or it'll be a couple of days later. And it was like, you know what? When you ate that ice cream on Tuesday night, I think you were lonely.
Yeah.
Days later, right? So if we look at the level of behavior, then I think, we can all imagine this idealized version of self, and that's a slippery slope, because you can always imagine more, right? And we don't want to work towards that idealized version of self to then find acceptance.
Yeah.
But you can use those behaviors as an indicator of where you are in this space. So if, I'm going to journal in this book every day, that's an indicator of where I am. It's not perfect truth, but it's an indicator. And so if I have a collection of these data points around behavior, calling a friend, calling my parents, spending time with a friend, working out, reading a book, writing in my journal, getting to bed on time, waking up on time, right? You can just have like all of the behaviors that we engage in.
Yeah.
And then you could probably plot them on where they are occurring based on where you are on that 0 to 10.
Yeah.
And so, the other day I was at a game, I don't know, it was stressful. I found myself eating these miniature Snickers bars.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't like buy miniature Snickers. I mean, I they're great, but like I had one, I had two, and as I was like finishing the second one, I was like, whoa, what's happening right now? I had to ask myself. That was the indicator of where I was. And so I think on that level of behavior, you can plot and understand where we are within that spectrum.
Yeah.
And that gives us a good sense of it. I think that's probably the easiest access point. And so for any of us as individuals, think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Think about how it makes you feel. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is the aftertaste, right? The aftertaste. So there are certain experiences that you have, certain things you consume, whether it's information, whether it's food, whether it's people, whatever those things are, that you have that interaction. The aftertaste leaves you feeling good, or the aftertaste leaves you feeling not good.
Yeah.
The aftertaste of those Snickers did not leave me feeling better, right?
Left you feeling worse.
But after you have a nice connected conversation with somebody, the aftertaste of that experience, you feel better, right? So the aftertaste of the behaviors on the left end of that spectrum will tend to not make you feel as good.
Got it.
Because they're more immediate pleasure seeking.
They're instant gratification.
Right? It's short term, quick sugar aftertaste. And then over here, these are the long-term deep connections that fill us with that esteem. And so we can monitor ourselves in the movement through that inventory.
It makes a lot of sense. The question that popped into my head though is like, so if you're saying, okay, look at your behaviors and ask you, what am I doing and how do they make me feel? What about the people who, I don't know that everybody has reached a point at which they are even the majority of the time brutally honest with themselves. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you could say, oh, I go shopping, retail therapy because it makes me feel good. But does it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or I ate all that Chick-fil-A when I was stressed out and it made me feel better, but did it? And we made some T-shirts here at the shop that say "Quit lying to yourself." Actually, I think Jack's wearing it right now, and it's a picture of a It's a picture of a guy giving a lie detector test to himself.
Okay.
And it's because I believe so strongly that like before any major, I guess enlightenment or just major change in your thinking, feeling, behaving, you have to reach a point of brutal honesty. You have to.
Yeah.
You have to.
Which is uncomfortable.
It's so uncomfortable.
Right. And I think there, and I forget the concept, the term for this, but it's kind of like this Goldilocks zone. And I've heard people talk about this in terms of employment, where the job isn't bad enough that you're going to quit. It's just not great. And so there's this middle kind of warm zone where it's not bad enough for you, to be honest, to make a change. So you just kind of exist in that state, uninspired, right? Because it hasn't reached a point yet where you said, this is enough, I'm leaving.
I do, yeah.
Right? And so that self-assessment typically takes getting to
where it's so bad.
To that point where you say, I've had it. And, like you hear about this a lot with people, AA, when they hit rock bottom, it's like, that's when the change happens. For me, it was the medical emergency, right? Like, a lot of times I think when you're in that middle zone and things are warm and maybe they're not great, maybe they're not so bad, but you're not required to engage in that self-assessment because the pain point isn't strong enough, right? There's not enough pain and suffering to like say, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? My wife just left me. I lost my job and my parents won't talk to me anymore. What am I doing with my life, right? That hasn't yet happened. It's like, maybe I'm not like working towards my dream. Maybe I'm not filled with a lot of purpose. Maybe my job doesn't make me happy. But you know what? It's fine. So there isn't enough of that urgency and that pain to really look. To
really be honest, yeah.
Yeah.
Pain provokes the honesty.
Yep.
Good is the enemy of great. That's something that I think applies in the situation as well. So I want to go back. As you were talking, I was thinking about the serving others and giving and receiving love. It seems like this. If you've shared something that I feel like would amount to a person's purpose, what am I here for? Why am I alive? Serving others and giving and receiving love. I wonder if that, if like the near-death experience. How does somebody get there? Because I'm when I think of what drives most people, at least when I've thought about it in the past, I guess I'll have to think about it more in depth now, given our conversation. But when I've thought about it in the past, it's like, money, things, the approval of our friends, and the approval and acceptance of our family, and the potential for growth or advancement. These are like the 5 main things that I see people give their whole life for. And for me, when I went to prison, I lost all those things. I lost all my money, all my possessions, all the people that I thought were my friends. My family didn't speak to me for a while, and all my college scholarships and all these things, all the opportunity that I'd worked my whole life to create for myself was gone. And it was the first time that I found peace, And so I think that that just instilled in me this knowing that like my peace is not attached to these things, and now I don't chase them anymore. And for you, I want to hear just your thoughts on this, because you've come to a place where you think the purpose of your life is serving others and giving and receiving love. And where do you think that comes from? You know, where do you think that comes from? And I know that just like the losing the fear of dying and, you know, the fear of failure with that, you know, how liberating that is, but also like you're able to live and make decisions from a place of the most important thing is the opportunity to serve and to give and receive love, not this check over here, not this opportunity, not what you think of me. And I think that that's also like if there's another superpower that we could talk about here from a mental, I guess, performance standpoint, it would be, you know, having the North Star of what your actual purpose is. And I think a lot of people are looking for that. So yeah, where does that come from? Where did that realization come from for you? Have you reflected on it?
I don't know.
Because that my explanation just now, that's where it came from. Like, I'm like, oh man, these are the things that I chased my whole life. And now I was never happy. And now I'm happy and I don't have any of those things, you know? So yeah, for you.
I don't know where it came from.
Yeah. You just knew.
It just came to me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All this thinking, reflecting, and this self-assessment.
Yeah. It just came to me. And I think the question was, at the time, was I satisfied with the quality of the life I had lived?
Yeah.
If I had died in that moment, was I satisfied with the quality of the life I had lived? And the answer was no. So then the question was, I know my life is not guaranteed because I think a lot of us learned this after the pandemic when everything got really, you know, shaken up. And all of a sudden it was like, well, nothing is certain.
Yep.
Right. But for me, it was 2007 when I realized, you know, 28, I was invincible, live forever, never get hurt. Right. And then I realized, oh no, I could die anytime. And it doesn't have to make sense. And it doesn't have to be rational when my light goes out.
Yeah.
Right. And it can happen in a moment. And so knowing that tomorrow is not guaranteed, what can I do on a daily basis? What is the way in which I can live on a daily basis so that whenever that time comes, expected, unexpected, planned, unplanned, whatever, I can know that the life I had been living up until that moment is one that I would feel satisfied with. And that's what aligns with those two principles, right? So if I think about, I just came from FLOAT STL, and, you know, I think about what happens in that space, the healing that happens in that space, the connection, the growth, the discovery that happens in that space for the guests, for the customers. And then I think about what happens in the experience of our team, our employees. There's three of us, and we just had like a group hug after I came out of the cold plunge because I was coming here.
Yeah.
And the three of us got together and gave like this 3-person group hug. And it was just like the growth in the community and the beauty that happens for those individuals being part of the experience that's facilitated there is a beautiful thing, right? So
something that you feel good about.
I feel great about that. In the fact that it's now kind of, you know, more and more functioning and living even without my, you know, presence. That's the manifestation, that's the expression of my time and my existence.
Yeah.
And that's something that I can feel good about applying myself to every day.
Yeah.
Right? So if I have this time, if I have this energy, if I have this attention, this existence, what can I be applying it to that I know feels good? Yeah.
It's almost like, it's almost as if you, let me back up. So I think that when most people say, okay, if I died today, would I be happy or satisfied with the person that I've been up until this point, or with the life that I've lived? And if the answer is no, you know, there's this obvious opportunity to start rebuilding the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that potentially there's a lot of people who get hung up on the 0 to this point.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, I could never undo that, and so I'm always going to be that. And and there's this it's almost as if you, every single day you have an opportunity to like recreate yourself, but you may have to imagine that, and this is something that I do, but you may have to imagine that today is the only day that matters. Today
It is the only day.
Today is all you have.
This
right?
is it.
It's it. You're living in the perpetual now.
Yeah,
there is no yesterday.
It's a Groundhog Day. You wake up, we have these hours, and that's it.
And that's it. And so you have to kind of let go of every day up until this point, because it no longer exists. It literally doesn't exist anywhere but in your mind.
Yep.
The only day you have is today, and you have to approach each day as if it's going to be your only day, and that at the end of the day, you are going to ask yourself, if I died in my sleep tonight, would I be happy with the person that I showed up as today? Right? And so it's almost as if you have to live one day at a time, but also like in the back of your mind, plan for the chance that you get to live tomorrow too. Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. I never thought about it in that way.
There's the idea that kind of the 1% better
every day
movement.
Yeah.
And then this idea of like what's important now, right? I mean, I didn't just like materialize into this chair from 17 years ago. I mean, there was a point where I was West County Mall, slinging pizzas at California Pizza Kitchen in over the holiday season. Yeah. Right? I guess at the time, 29, 30 years old. Yeah. Bringing pizzas to people during Christmas. Yeah. I mean, that was 15 years ago. It wasn't yesterday, but it wasn't a lifetime ago, right? Yeah. Like that really happened. Driving to that parking lot, putting on that apron, smelling like pizza, working with 18-year-olds when I was 30 with 2 degrees. And like, I really did that. Yeah. Because that's what needed to be done. There's no like leapfrogging to now. There's no leapfrogging. Where, and I wonder sometimes, now opening the business, and this, I mean, getting here, opening it up, working there all day, closing it down, then doing all the business services stuff that it doesn't even exist. We've been open this is our 10th year.
FLOAT STL?
Yeah.
No way.
Like I left.
Has it been there for 10 years?
Yeah, we opened in February 2015. So this is our 10th year.
That's amazing.
So after I graduated from my psychology counseling program, I worked in a residential treatment center, did clinical psychotherapy, and did that for 5 years. And then got to the point of I encountered floating, and I wanted to bring that service to St. Louis because there was nowhere to do it. Left my job to start that business. Yeah. No idea if it was going to work. No idea if anyone wanted to do it. And, had to figure all that out and work through it. But now that, it's been 10 years, and now that I don't open up, sometimes I wonder if, like someone maybe who we just hired, 3 weeks ago, if they, they think I'm just like the owner who like, I don't know, bought this place and just comes around every once in a while and tells people what to do. They don't know
that you showed up every morning.
Yeah, like, so I can see the me that's here, and and there's going to be some me 10 years from now. Yeah. Right. But it didn't just materialize. It happened from doing what can I do today? Yeah. And maybe that's waking up early. Maybe that's writing in a journal. Maybe that's reading a chapter of a book. Maybe that's looking at your bank account. Maybe that's talking to somebody about your credit card debt. Maybe that's calling up an old friend, forgiving somebody, whatever. There are those opportunities every day to do something. And it builds over time. So for me, I think I'm 45 now. As I get older, I also start to see and experience life on these longer time horizons. Yeah. I'm thinking about things in decades.
Man.
You know, like I'm seeing my parents in their late 70s, and I'm here now thinking about what's my life going to be like in 30 years. When I was 30, I didn't think that way.
Yeah.
You know, I might think a month or a week ahead, but now I'm thinking in decades. And so it's like laying the groundwork every day.
Yeah.
In building. That's also some of the work that I'll do with athletes.
Yeah.
Right.
And these are athletes at the top of their game.
Top of their
highest
game.
level.
So I work baseball, NHL, professional soccer players.
Yeah. And they're young.
They're young.
So they're still thinking in 6 months to a year out.
Oh yeah.
And not much further than that.
Or even one night.
Yeah.
You could have a poor performance, and that seems like everything. And how do I gather the perspective to integrate that into a story that's bigger than tonight?
That's a 10-year career.
Right.
Not a big deal.
You know, let's go back 3 years to your worst night 3 years ago. Does anybody remember that?
Yeah.
Do you even remember? You know, maybe they do, but maybe they don't. Right. So it's how do we take these experiences and allow ourselves to see them accurately, just like we were talking about with the habits? Can we have an accurate representation of ourselves, an honest and transparent representation of ourselves in a way that allows us to integrate that information so we can learn and grow from it? A lot of times when we experience that pain or that suffering or that shame, we want to avoid it. We want to hide it. We want to mask it and move on. We want to cover it up, right? And push it away because it's bad, right? So I feel a little bit sad. I'm going to go drink. I feel a little bit sad. I'm going to have popcorn and ice cream. You know, I'm going to try to not be sad.
Yeah.
But maybe there's a reason why you're sad. Maybe it's important to feel sad.
Yeah.
Feel that, experience it, integrate it, metabolize it, move on.
Yeah.
Right? So don't work so hard to avoid, because a lot of times the avoidant behavior is the problem behavior, right? So if you have a performance, if you have a setback, feel it. It's okay.
Yeah.
But then allow yourself to integrate it and learn and take that learning in a way that you can apply to the next day. Because if we just want to kind of push it away, we don't get the learning, right?
Yeah.
So there's this idea of like, when you feel pain, when you feel suffering, reflect. Why did this happen? How am I here? What did I contribute to this? You know, you could take your scenario and it's like painful. Let's just forget about that. It's in the past. Let's get rid of it. It's like, no, there's lots of lessons there.
There's lots there.
Lots of lessons there. We don't want to just, you know, you could have numbed out, you could have disconnected, you could have tried to forget about it and just, you know,
Move on.
Yeah. But that integration of that pain and those lessons is part of what creates the person you are today, part of what creates your wisdom, your drive, right?
I am picturing, I don't know why in my head, because, okay, Jack here, he presented that concept, this concept to me. He's like, you know, in our 20s, we think a year ahead. In our 30s, we think 5 years. In our, you know, whatever. And as we get older, we start to think about, and I never heard that before last week. Never, ever. And you just now say, I'm 45, I'm starting to think in decades. And he presented it not as just a consequence of aging, but as a mental evolution of sorts. Like, it's, you know, it's not just going to happen to everybody just because you're getting older. You know, and so what popped into my mind was how much I value habits. And I'm saying that in that way because I don't know that it's true for everyone. But what popped into my mind was like how that evolution and what enables you to start thinking in decades maybe is that you have assessed so much. You've, you know, whether succeeded or failed, reflected, learned, applied, and a lot of what I imagine you taking away from all of your life experiences up until this point, you keep the things that become daily, like, okay, going back to all I can do is show up today, right?
Mm-hmm.
So almost all of your energy and effort is focused on living one day at a time, just today, this perpetual today. And so a lot of the most successful people that I know, and you know, I would imagine also the happiest are very habit-based people.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you become ultra committed to these habits, whether they're, you know, exercises, you know, mental habits of reflecting at the end of your day or being honest with yourself, or actual physical behaviors that you're doing, you can sort of project out and predict that what is this habit going to produce in a year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I work out every day and I eat this way every day, what is the outcome of that?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just imagining, this is an original thought of mine, right? Is if you build your life around enough of those habits and you spend enough time reflecting on what the eventuality of all these habits are, then it enables you to almost operate with certainty that in a year I'm going to be here, in 5 years I'm going to be here. And so the more your life becomes built around these habits, like Jocko says, discipline equals freedom, the further the time horizon you get to think about and plan for. Yeah, I don't know. It was just something like I had a visual when you were talking. I'm starting to think in decades, and I'm like thinking, man, maybe it's because over the years you've accumulated so many tools that become your daily operating, you know, your standard operating procedure on a daily basis. That's every day.
Yeah, and you're cultivating that.
Yes.
You're nurturing it over time, like you know, the plants that you have in here, right? Like there's a gathering upstairs, right? You have these community gatherings. That started with an idea, and then it was put into action in the gatherings that you had, whether it was the first month or the first 3 months, are going to be different than the gatherings that happen 5 years from now. Mm-hmm. But you can't get to the 5 years from now unless you've been having them the whole time.
Without doing every one.
And you're going to learn, and it's going to grow, and it's going to cultivate, and it's going to build, and it's going to become its own thing. Yeah. And that's the projection.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you don't know, when we bring it back to like what can people do in the present, you don't know what step number 5 is, right? You don't, like, for me, you know, there was a time where I consumed more alcohol.
Yeah.
Right? Stayed up later. Got worse sleep. I didn't know what the challenge or the obstacle of maintaining a consistent AM workout schedule was going to be, because I never encountered the opportunity to have that experience.
Yeah.
So I couldn't even realize the benefit or the challenge of engaging in that practice, because I wasn't on that level yet.
We weren't even past staying up late, drinking at night. Right. And yeah.
My wife and I just had our 9-year wedding anniversary.
It's amazing.
I can't explain, you know, to myself 15 years ago what the challenges, obstacles, and benefits and growth indicators of that are without getting there. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you have to start with those behaviors that are kind of the accessible, low-hanging fruit ones.
Yeah.
You talked about the caffeine. It's like, for somebody who drinks, you know, Mountain Dew at night before they go to bed, like, you don't even know what's after that.
Yeah.
Like, you stop that first and then integrate that behavior, and then you'll see what comes up. If you're drinking before you go to sleep and you don't get good sleep, and therefore you don't go to the gym at 7 a.m, you don't even know what comes after going to the gym for 3 months.
A lot of times you don't even know, you know, what happens after waking up.
Exactly.
You don't know that going to the gym in the morning is something that you actually love.
You're not going to do yoga and journal and meditate and breathe in the morning.
Yeah.
If you're waking up 5 minutes before you got to head out the door.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you just start with those most accessible ones, the most detrimental ones.
Yeah.
And work to negate those, take them out of the equation, that opens up space. And in that space is the opportunity to encounter the new behaviors.
Man, I've heard it said subtraction before addition.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody is so eager, especially in a world of like gurus and, self-help of, what more can I do?
Yep.
And the best thing to do is subtraction before addition, and just ask yourself, what do I need to stop doing?
Mm-hmm.
And it creates that space.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
I a lot of times I'll prescribe this walking meditation.
Yeah. What's that like?
It's so simple. It's so simple. It's kind of humorous.
Yeah.
But it's so challenging. Very few people do it. And when I was going through my recovery period from the surgery, I became very anxious and very depressed because I did not have an ability to act. I couldn't do anything to help. I was just sitting with no ability to have effort, right? And I had all this energy and I wanted to do. So I had to sit, and it was difficult to be in that state. And, by, again, some, stroke of good fortune, I encountered these practices. And the walking meditation is simple. It's you match your steps to your breath, not your breath to your steps. Okay, so you just breathe naturally. As you inhale, you lift one foot. And then as you exhale, you put it down. And as you're putting it down, right? When you reach the bottom of that exhale, it's fully down. And then as you begin to inhale on your next breath, you raise your other foot. And the top of the inhale, your foot's at the top. And then as you breathe out, you start putting it down. And you walk at the pace of your breath. So you can do a 10-minute meditation and walk, 15 feet.
Yeah.
Or just back and forth. So when you talk about subtraction, it's like you don't need, everything is right here. You don't need extra.
Yeah.
Be with yourself and you'll notice what you need. Right?
That's crazy.
You'll notice your stimulus hunger, right? You'll notice your urgency to grab the phone. You'll notice all of this movement to pull things into your experience when just being in your experience is enough in itself, right? So I think about what's the difference between sitting on a bench in the park and being filled with joy or sitting on a bench in the park and being bored. It's the same bench. It's the same park. It's your state of mind.
Yeah.
And so when you can be full with nothing, then everything else is kind of extra on top of that.
It's just, cherry on top.
There's no chasing. And so the addiction model, right? Addiction is I need more, and I get less.
Yeah.
And so the opposite is
I need less.
and I keep getting more. So it's not a movement to find things that give us stuff, but can we build it from in here?
That's amazing. Sitting, and sitting still with yourself, you notice your urges. You notice you want a phone. You want something. I spent a lot of time in solitary confinement, and in there was the first time that it occurred that I realized how much we just conveniently distract ourselves all day, every day, because it was the first time in my life I was in a cement room with I didn't even have books or paper to write on or pen, nothing. There's a period of time where you're like kind of just get in there before you have any of your property. And you're just in there in a concrete cell with staring at the wall, and I remember thinking to myself, this is where people go crazy. Like this is where they lose their mind. Because it was almost unbearable to me to just sit there. And then I started thinking about how we live our lives and how like we wake up, our alarm's on our phone. So of course it's got to be next to our bed, or, we wake up, we look at our phone, we check if we have text messages or emails, we turn on the news and while we're making breakfast. And it's just, you never have a moment. And I read once, I'm a big fan of James Allen. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's a guy that wrote, his most well-known book is As a Man Thinketh. But anyway, he described our thoughts as a stream. He's like, imagine your thoughts are like you have a stream of thoughts that go across your mind, and as soon as you lay your attention on something, that it's like putting a stick in the stream and diverting the stream. And now, even though you're still having like this, random occurrence of thoughts, it's not random anymore. And it's, and yeah, I don't know. Just, I think that resisting the urge to put stick in your stream and spending some time alone and just sitting with yourself on a park bench or whatever, and just letting that flow of thoughts come over your mind. You are, yes, going to notice your urges and impulses, but also you're going to discover a side of yourself that you've never been acquainted with before, oh man, I'm interested in this thing, or I don't know. I did anyway. But okay, I had some questions here. I wanted to ask you, when it comes to like mental performance, who is the standard? Who is there a person that you look at and you're like, or you can refer to and be like, this is what sort of conquering yourself looks like. This is what at least appreciating the power of the stuff that you try to teach people. This is what it looks like. Is there a person
that kind of like embodies?
That kind of embodies.
You
want to be able to refer to somebody and be like, okay, well, like, look at what this person, this is a fruit, not of action, but what preceded that action was a realization, and it's the stuff that you teach.
Yeah.
Right?
When I look for examples, because I try to teach not just, through my expression, but I try to find examples that individuals will relate to.
Yeah, or at least aspire to, right?
But that they can, it's not just me saying this is really good. That doesn't always.
I resisted asking you this question up until this point because your personal testimony of this stuff is enough. It for real. Like when you share and somebody actually comes to know how you, like the path that you walked and working in Starbucks and, delivering pizzas on Christmas and then sitting in this chair and being a mental health performance coach for Major League Baseball. I always say like you judge a thing by its fruits, right? Well, if you judge a thing by its fruits, well, what you're telling me is probably good. I should listen just because of the fruits. I see your business, it's successful and it impacts people in a positive way. I see the people you meet with. The reason you come, when you started coming to my coffee shop, you were coming with a very well-known professional hockey player. Yeah. You kept meeting this guy. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I know who he is, but who's he? You know what I mean? The fruits are good. Yeah. But
I guess part of the challenge is, in the different way that the service is delivered is that I'm not always afforded the opportunity to outline the whole story.
Yeah, you can't. And so in the absence of, who do you use?
It's got to be a quicker delivery. And a lot of times the benefit needs to show up as the way to build trust that allows for a deeper relationship. It's kind of like, hey, I'm struggling. Do you have a solution? Great, that worked. Now I'll get to know you better. It's not the other way around, right?
Yes.
But I think the one that tends to resonate with a lot of people is Kobe. I think that's
just the standard in my head. Yeah. And I didn't even want to use him as an example because I wanted to see if you say the same thing.
I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of clips out there. There's a lot of representation. And,
he was just open about it.
You can hear his dialogue. You can hear his thought process. You can hear about how he thinks about himself. The Conor McGregor, I think.
Tell me about that clip. You never told me about it.
It's just, he's talking to a reporter and he's talking about leading up into a fight. And I guess in the previous fight, it didn't go well. And I don't know, Conor McGregor so well to know which fight it was. But he's saying basically, leading up into that fight, I told myself I was going to wake up at this time. I didn't wake up at this time. I told myself, don't eat this thing. I ate that thing. I told myself, don't drink this. I drank it. Right? And he said all of those little actions, they built up over time. And it gave me a sense of feeling when I stepped into that ring. I knew what I had been doing in the previous 6 months. Mm-hmm. I couldn't erase that from my mind. I knew I had not taken every opportunity to be the best person that I could be, to be the most prepared to come into this competition. I knew that. Yeah. There was no way to not know that. I couldn't lie to myself.
Yeah.
And so when he was going through the preparation for this fight, he was saying, I told myself to wake up at that time. I've been waking up at that time. I told myself, don't eat this thing. I haven't been eating that thing. And so he feels, it doesn't guarantee that he's going to win. And that's what I tell these guys. Yeah. It doesn't mean you're going to hit a home run. It doesn't mean you're going to score a goal, whatever that is. But you're going to put yourself in a better position for that to be possible.
Yeah.
And at that level, those margins are fine.
Yeah. The finest advantage you could get.
Everybody.
It matters.
Everybody's elite.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you want to have that margin, you have to do those things.
It's just a mental state.
Yep.
That guy's been eating burgers and French fries every day, and you've been eating on plan.
If you're a pitcher, the batter is doing, he wants to destroy the ball and you want to, get him out. Like you both are battling.
Who's been doing it?
And it doesn't mean 10 times out of 10 the guy who's been doing it is going to win, but he's probably going to win more often.
But he's probably going to win.
Because it really is about that belief. So I think that clip is really powerful. But yeah, Kobe, I think, has the most content out there. And I think
bulletproof.
Most athletes out there, really respect him.
Not only that's what I grew up idolizing, but not only does he have the most content where he's talking, but now that he's gone, there's content of other people being like, and I mean, the biggest names in basketball being like, Kobe was different. Yeah. Kobe was different. We won the championship. We were going to go out. Kobe said, go to the bar. No, I'm going to the gym.
Yeah. There was the Redeem. Did you watch the Redeem Team series?
No.
So that one was all about the team that went over and they did really poorly in the Olympics. Mm-hmm. And then it was an embarrassment. I don't recall the dates, but then they brought the team and they rebuilt it and they went back and they redeemed because they won the gold.
Yeah.
But there was a whole thing in there of like, Kobe was up at 4 a.m. working out. And there was a time, I think, when guys had gone out and they had come back late night. And he was in the gym. Working out when they got home, and they were kind of like, oh shit. Like, we have to get our stuff together, right? Because this is the real thing. And does that help you physically? But I think for him, when he went into competition, he had that belief, like, I'm going to beat you now because I've been beating you.
Because I beat you in preparation.
I've been beating you. And that's what I talk about in the battle of the competition. We don't know. We don't know the outcome. Everybody's trying to win, right? So when that pitcher throws the ball, or when someone swings the bat, or when they hop on the ice, or when they go out on the field, we don't know what's going to happen. I've been using this analogy of like Robot Wars. You remember there was like a show, I think it was on Sci-Fi, where like these two teams of engineers would build these robots.
Oh,
and then they would just let them go out and fight.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't know what the other team's robot is.
Yep.
You're just building your best robot, and then you let it go and see what happens. And in that moment, when you let it go, it's done. The building part is over. Yeah. So it's like, compete with yourself at the level where you have control, and you have control over everything you're doing in your preparation, in your consistency, in your intensity, in your focus, so that when you get to that point of competition, you can engage in the competition and enjoy the competition and be in flow and be free and have fun and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right? Battle with yourself for not doing those extra reps. Battle with yourself for not coming in early. Battle with yourself to get all of that right. And that's kind of what I hear from Connor and Kobe.
Yeah.
It's like, I've been battling with myself so that when I step onto that, playing field, I know I'm the best version of me.
Yeah.
And you might beat me, but I can't be any better than I am.
but then when you lose, you don't take it as hard.
100%.
Because you knew that you gave it everything.
That's it. And I think that's really, and I equate it to, I think tantrums is a strong word, but it's when people are disappointed. I mean, everybody wants to win.
Yeah.
But when there is a overly strong, like, emotional reaction to the failure, I think it's really self-directed.
It's self-directed, yeah.
And it's probably not unconscious, but it's self-directed, and it's about what I haven't been able to do. Everyone's going to have their limitations. Everyone's going to reach a point when, it cannot get better. But can I at least get myself to my top capacity?
I think even
best.
in life, not even just in sports, like you're using this with respect to athletes at any level, really, but even in life, like when you don't get the job, the promotion,
Oh, yeah.
when your girlfriend dumps you, or when all of these events where we say, oh, that person or the world screwed me, or my boss screwed me, or that girl's no good, or whatever. I think those are those overly emotional responses to things that just happen in life. And a lot of times it is also self-directed, right? It's at least on a subconscious level, because you weren't showing up in that relationship the way that you really should have, or you haven't been trying as hard as this guy at work, and even though he's newer than you, you've been here longer. It doesn't matter, and you know that. You know it, but you won't allow yourself to consciously acknowledge that. It's really, man.
Yeah, there's this psychological concept called locus of control. And it's basically where I place that force of responsibility.
Yeah.
And so if I have an externalized locus of control, then basically as things are happening, they're happening to me, right? So, if I'm in traffic, these other cars are either, I remember this one quite a lot growing up. The cars are either driving too fast or too slow.
Yeah.
Right? But it's not me. I'm not the one that needs to go
driving
faster
the right
or slower.
speed.
I'm driving the right speed. These guys in front of me are too slow, and the guys behind me are too fast. When I used to golf with my dad. Guys behind us, always too fast.
Yeah.
Guys in front of us, always too slow.
Yeah.
Right? That was the locus. It was placing the control of force outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
And so what, more healthy is an internal locus of control. So we can't control the world, but we can control how we operate within it, right? And so you can then see what are my choices. So on the highway, well, maybe I can slow down, or I can choose, it equips you to be much more effective because you're then focused on the things that are within your control. Doesn't mean you can do anything, but you can say, okay, I can see this. You say here, external locus of control. No one's coming into the coffee shop. There's construction, or they got this 5K race this week, and nobody's coming in. And it's, the city won't do these regulations, and our parking's all jacked up.
Yeah.
That doesn't change anything.
It doesn't change anything.
It doesn't change anything. So the internal locus of control is yes, or I talk about the weather a lot. Like it's raining. Okay. We can point up at the rain and we can shout and complain about that and getting wet, or we can grab an umbrella. We can grab a raincoat. We can, plan to do something inside. Like you can take that control in. It doesn't change the fact that it's raining, and maybe, it sucks that it's raining and we don't like that it's raining. But we can do something.
We can still do something.
We can still do something.
Yeah. I kind of verbalized this earlier of the way that I verbalize my purpose, if you will, is like contributing. It could be summed up in contributing, but contributing to other people's lives in a positive way, and to the world and to my community in a positive way. And so I do kind of romantically think about, having a positive impact on community at scale. I really do, especially it's so, I can't help but see all the tension in the world and all the, the unhappiness and the depression and the anxiety and all the things. I can't help but see it all and feel confident that I have discovered a solution. I don't live with those things anymore, and it's amazing. It's the best thing ever. Life is so beautiful on the other side of those things, and it's cool because what we're building here, for me, I think that the progression anyway for me was physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. Like I started changing my behavior, really, like kind of like what you said. I guess that goes back to that. And I started eating better, and I started taking care of myself, and then it sort of laid the groundwork for me to open my mind up to new truths. I started to wonder if everything that I'd believed up until this point was actually true, or if I just believed it up until this point, and I started to question myself and life, and then, sort of stumbled upon like more of a spiritual relationship, I guess, if you will. But so I really have, when you're talking, I try to, I'm thinking about like, man, I want so desperately to know what the world would look like if we could somehow figure out how to, give this understanding to people at scale. And I'm sure that maybe you've experienced this, but like you look around and there's just like this helplessness, because it's like the stuff that you have to give and to share with people, it doesn't cost anything. Like, I mean, it does if they want to, hire you as their coach, but like, it didn't cost you. I mean, it cost you pain, but it didn't cost you anything monetarily. It didn't, and it doesn't even cost that much time to get it. And so I'm constantly, foolishly hope that you have a solution. Yeah. But how do we give it to people at scale? And then, one of the questions I had written down for you was, how important is it for people to try to focus on their physical, and or spiritual, like in the realm of what you help people with, this mental performance, when they come to you? Let's say that like their diet is atrocious, or they just neglect themselves physically. They don't, or they don't think at all about what their purpose is, or the meaning of their life, or any of these more, I guess, spiritual musings, if you will. But how important is it? Are those two elements, or can you just go in and insert yourself when somebody, is neglecting themselves in a physical sense and doesn't really care about any of the big existential questions? Can you just go in and they'll be receptive to some of these techniques and these mental tweaks that you help people with?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm always working from, I think in a clinical setting, it's been different in the past, because we have a very specific medical diagnosis. Yeah. And we're working on that. And, at times with addiction, there can be need for recovery, and the individual can be in and out of motivation, right? And so at times you're working with the individual, and at times you're kind of working against their addiction, which is a challenging place to be. Yeah. But from the perspective of coaching, I'm really working from the individual and their perspective of what is the direction that they would like to move towards. And so I'm usually operating from a place of curiosity, and I kind of like to not have the answers. So I ask a lot of dumb questions, and it's usually something like, oh, it's interesting. This is just an example. It's like, oh, it's interesting that you say, you really want to, I don't know, work on this relationship. Or let's say, we'll just use the nutrition one. I don't do nutrition counseling or anything, but like you could say, oh, it's interesting. You say you really want to lose weight, and I want to help you with that. Tell me about how your evening routine is, either aligning or not aligning with that goal. And I'm not here to make any judgments. I'm not here to make any decisions. This is their life. But the things that seem out of place for me, I'm just going to ask about. How does staying up late and eating one more meal help you with your goal? And then
it brings them to the brutal honesty.
Yeah. And that's it. And so like in the therapeutic world, we call it holding up the mirror. Right. And so I'm really trying to sit in this place. One, I'm trying to create that sense of trust and security. So you can feel that in allowing yourself to be shared with me, I'm going to receive and reflect it back to you in a non-judgmental, compassionate way. Right? I'm not going to make fun of you.
Which is extremely important, especially to creating that intimacy that you spoke about in the beginning. Yeah.
Let's be honest, and I'm really here to help you with that. And so then in that process of you sharing it with me and me reflecting it back to you, you're able to hear and see yourself in a way that maybe you've never allowed yourself to be heard or seen. And that's when the discoveries happen. That's amazing. When the light bulbs go off. And that's when a lot of times people say, well, I've never said this way before. I've never heard myself say this before. But, and that's the moment. And so that's what I enjoy the most is in this process of coaching, when these moments of awareness happen, they open up and you can't put them back inside.
Yeah. Now you're aware.
Now you're aware. Yes. And so then the question is, once that awareness comes out, there's an energy of keeping that hidden.
Yeah.
And so once the awareness comes out, now we've released that energy and we can use that energy for other things.
Yeah.
But then when that awareness comes out, now there's a discomfort of that awareness.
Yeah.
And so then so now that we have that discomfort, can we use the energy to remove the discomfort?
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, and now that we know that, what are we going to do about it? So you can continue to persist. Now with the conscious awareness that staying up late and eating that extra meal is not helping you.
Sabotaging, who I want to be.
Or you can take that energy and apply it to making some sort of a change.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of like dumb questions and curiosity of me kind of not knowing, but really just being compassionately curious.
Well, and I would imagine that it kind of leads most people to the same place or similar place in the sense of like, because I was, wondering about how important it is for somebody to be taking care of themselves physically, to feel self-actualized, or asking themselves these important questions to feel self-actualized. And I would imagine that when you ask these questions, these seemingly silly questions, and that most people will probably gravitate towards a place of like, well, yeah, I probably should value my life and my health and take care of myself a little bit. And, well, yeah, money isn't the most important thing in the world, maybe it's these other things. So they all kind of land within a circle, and then the details become the details. But that's really interesting. Something that I have tried to I've tried to be mindful of, especially early on, when I was, I didn't have so many responsibilities. I wasn't so busy. I was, still in prison, and I was monitoring myself. I imagined this ideal version of myself, and then the challenge was just, hey, on a moment-to-moment basis, just like ask yourself, how would that guy show up? And that really helped me a lot. And what I realized is that everything matters, you know, and I would tell myself everything matters, everything, every decision, every word you utter, everything matters, because everything that you do is either an accurate representation of what that guy would do, or it's you settling for a version of you that's less than the one that you are capable of showing up as, or I guess less than is different from the one that you really want to show up as in this moment. And that's where I think the value that I place on these other things has come from, because you know, I mean, obviously you want to imagine that the best version of you is healthy, right? Is vibrant, you know, is at peace, you know, is purpose filled, is fulfilled every day in the work. And, you know, and so I guess I imagined that you can't get there without taking care of yourself, without living for a higher purpose, you know. Do you ever talk with like these athletes about like why they do what they do? Or
Yeah, I think purpose is huge.
Purpose is huge.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I was curious, like how often, if at all, that comes up.
Well, I think in the absence of purpose, then, you know, you're living and dying by your most recent performance. And that's a horrible way to live, because you go from being...
Why? Like why?
Well, it's just so volatile.
I mean, why in the absence of purpose? Like why in the absence? Like how are those two things correlated? You're living and dying by.
Well, like if you measured your value based on how many people came in here per day.
Yeah.
You know,
today I feel like crap. Tomorrow I might feel better.
Right. And it's just hugely volatile,
Yeah.
you know, and you want to chase that good feeling, but you don't have control over it.
Yes.
And so if you have an idea of purpose that's greater than your most recent result, you're able to weather that storm differently, because you understand you're operating on a kind of a different graph, a different scale, and you're looking at a trend over time. So if you understand your purpose is to learn and get better, well, even when you fail, you can learn and get better. When you win, you can learn and get better. If your purpose is to, you know, gain notoriety and fame, to be an example for a certain group of people, you know, then whether you won or lose, it's about how you conduct yourself. If you want to be a great role model for your children, and that's your purpose in the game, well, of course you're going to want to win and be a champion. But when you lose, how are you going to handle that loss?
You
right?
still did it.
So it's always a teaching opportunity. So when you understand, you don't lose the will to win, you don't lose the drive to compete, but you understand that there's something beyond that immediacy.
Yeah.
And that allows you to then kind of operate in a less volatile place that gives you more of a consistent foundation and stability, which I think conserves some energy and allows you to continue to apply yourself over and over. You know, something we talk about is when you do have a failure, when you do have a loss, you know, what is the depth of that feeling, and what is the duration of it?
Yeah.
How long do you carry that? Are you in that for days? Are you carrying that into tomorrow's competition? Are you starting tomorrow's competition in the feeling from the day before? Yeah. You know, it's over. Yeah. There's a feel it, learn from it, but then we need to move on.
And there's nothing wrong with it being deep.
Right.
As long as the duration is short.
That's right. Feel it, integrate it, move on. Right. And so that's what I think that the purpose is so powerful.
Yeah. You got to have a North Star that like, okay, but I can, like, using the coffee shop, you know, I really imagine that every single interaction I get to pour into people, and so rather than grading myself on and I've actually done this, because I come from a sales background, marketing, you know, similar to you, and I used to every day when I would get to work, the first thing I would do is check my sales from the day before. Check my number. That's what it. And I mean, that was just, I lived and died by it, but I was good at my job.
Yeah.
And so every day I was winning, you know, and when you open a business, obviously this isn't Starbucks, you know, nobody's ever heard of Omen Coffee before. So like we're fighting and clawing for every new customer that comes in, and, you know, and we're a month in, 3 months in, 6 months in, 9 months in. And you know, I would look at the total number of transactions that we had per day and compare it to the day before, our best ever or whatever. And I live and die by that. But I had to like, you know, keep reminding myself that like, hey dude, all you can do is pour into each person, you know, something I verbalize to my employees. Like, our job is to remind people of how special it is to connect with another human being in real life. That's our job. They should walk out of here and be like, man, I don't know what it is about that place, but man, it's every time I come in here, I feel better. And I think one of the biggest problems in our culture right now is that we're living in a digital medium. You know, we spend so much time online and on devices, and, you know, focusing and connecting with people online, right? Like you can't connect with people. It's a lie that we're telling ourselves that, you know, and it's not, I don't think it's a coincidence that we see this epidemic really of mental health issues in our country. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we're seeing there's also an obesity epidemic that I think is closely tied to people's mental state. You know, we're self-sabotaging. We're literally eating ourselves to death, some of us. And I think it's because we're more connected than we've ever been, but we're more disconnected than we've ever been. We're emotionally and physically disconnected from people, and we didn't evolve to live like that. And so when I opened the coffee shop, the reason why I opened a coffee shop and not starting a coffee company is because, you know, I just wanted to bring people in, talk to them in real life, pour into them, and remind them that, like, okay, I think the solution to all your problems is surrounding yourself with a community of people who you can trust, that have your best interests at heart, that you have their best. We're all in this together type deal. When I grew up, you know, it didn't matter if I was an atheist, my neighbor was a Muslim, and on this side was a Catholic. It didn't matter. We could agree to disagree on the rules of the universe because we all live here. So what's in your best interest is also in my best interest. And if I see your cat wandering down the street, I'm going to go get it and be like, hey, I know that's your cat. So, but I think that's, you know, I think it's huge. I think, you know, I think the first step to any potential solution in the world is people actually talking to each other in real life again. Like so I don't know. I lost my train of thought, but dude, well, I can't express how much I appreciate this conversation. It's really brought me. It's opened my eyes to new perspectives on things that I thought I understood that I maybe didn't understand as well as I think I did. And now it's really, I mean, at bare minimum, it's gotten me really excited about the potential conversations I get to continue to have with you, because you come to Omen all the time. Yeah. For real. I was saying to you off air that, like, I love to surround myself with people who ask good questions and who, you know, maybe have answers to things or thoughts to contribute. And it's, I don't know how, but you've just skyrocketed to the top of my list of the people that I want that I want to ask a question to and just see what you got. So man, I really appreciate it. Before we sign off, just talk a little bit about where you're at, what you do now, because I know that, you know, we have all kinds of people that listen to this podcast, people from St. Louis, people not from St. Louis. So you got FLOAT STL. You also have like a private practice where you help people. So let's talk about that real quick.
Sure. Yeah. So I have FLOAT STL, which is it's a wellness center. We have 2 locations here in St. Louis, Midtown and Maryland Heights. And we have an array of healing modalities, all wellness based, from flotation, sensory deprivation tanks to infrared saunas, massage chairs, Normatec boots, cold plunge, contrast therapy, massage therapy, and that's been really beautiful over the time. And we've been open for 10 years now. I do a good amount of my time is spent working with the St. Louis Cardinals as the mental performance coach for them. I work with the players and helping them to kind of be the best that they can be when they go on the field and compete, and handle the ups and downs that come along with that, and the pressure that's associated with being a professional athlete, both on and off the field, and helping them both as athletes and just as humans.
Yeah.
But my background before that was in business. And I think that experience, both being in the clinical world and both also working in the business world, kind of has me, positioned in a way to understand what it's like to be a business owner, to be a business executive, and to have that experience of creating something, and the pressure that comes along with being a founder, with being a small business owner. So in my private practice, I work with athletes outside of baseball. I'm kind of exclusive. I am exclusive to the Cardinals, so I'm working with them.
If you play for the Yankees, sorry, it's off limits.
It's off limits. It's off limits. I'm all Cardinals. But outside of baseball, I work with athletes in other sports and at other levels of sport. But then I also work with business owners, and one population that has really spoke to me are these individuals that work really hard. They do commit a good portion of their life to create a business. They sacrifice a lot, and they really live out of balance in a way to create that business. And they reach a point of success that most people don't achieve within business, but they pay a price for that. And when they reach that level, a lot of times there's a realization that I'm not happy, I'm alone,
the price was too high.
The price was too high. And so those individuals really kind of speak to me, and I have a lot of those individuals as clients, and helping them to reconnect with more of a life of wholeness, where they can find contentment and joy and purpose outside of that kind of singular focus and drive that they had for so long.
Yeah. I have two follow-up questions. One is, if people want to try FLOAT STL, what do you think is like what's the draw there? Is it the float tanks? Is it what should they try first? Because you have a number of services in there.
Yeah. Well, I think floating is our backbone. Yeah. Right. It's the reason why we opened the business. It's what really changed my life when I first floated in 2010. And I think it's super powerful. So I would highly recommend that. The other services have come along as complements to floating, and also just with the realization that not everybody wants to float in water. Yeah. Right. So the massage chairs are beautiful. I did that before I came here. Cold plunge really wasn't a thing when we first opened. That is awesome.
It's a big thing now.
We had Dana White here a couple of weeks ago. He was cold plunging at our place.
That's amazing.
Before the UFC. So that's cool. But I think floating is the number one thing. To try.
It's for those of you that don't know, I think the technical term is a sensory deprivation chamber. Yeah. And so the experience is you lay in this water that's very buoyant, right? And it's the water is supposed to be the same temperature as your internal body temperature, correct?
Or the skin receptor, so it's usually 93.5 to 94.5 degrees, and so as you're laying in the water, your brain stops kind of being able to differentiate between where your skin ends and where the water begins.
Exactly.
So simultaneously you have a weightless experience, yes, but you also have a formless experience where your perception of your body kind of melts away, and you're kind of like floating consciousness
And then you're also afforded this opportunity, because obviously you can't be on TikTok while you're in the float tank, right?
That's
so you're afforded this opportunity.
People have tried.
Yeah. It's so crazy. Well, you're afforded this opportunity to sit in the experience, like you were referring to earlier.
Yep.
You know, you will notice those urges, those impulses. You will want to get out of the tank. Likely, you'll want to get out of it on your first float. You'll want to get out before it's done.
100%.
Almost guaranteed. And so I think that would be a really cool sort of litmus test for people who listen to this and start, you're thinking, man, all this stuff this Kevin guy is saying is really interesting. Like you want to go self-validate some of the stuff that he was talking about. Go float one time and see how uncomfortable it is.
Just be with yourself.
To just be with yourself.
Just be with yourself.
Yep.
There's
It's
so
amazing.
much information there. There's so much knowing there. I mean, that is your primary, like you are always with yourself. Be with yourself.
Yeah.
And learn from that place.
Yeah.
And you'll have so much knowledge from being with yourself. Then you can go take that out into the world.
Yeah. It's amazing, dude. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for
thoroughly
having
enjoyed
me.
it. Yeah. I hope that you guys listening, that you enjoyed it, that you check out Float STL, that those of you, I know we have, some high level, some collegiate athletes at bare minimum, if this is the type of stuff that, this is kind of guidance that you need. It's just guidance. It's just bumpers on the, on the lane. Reach out to Kevin, or reach out to me. If you don't know how to reach out to Kevin, reach out to me and I'll point you in the right direction, because this stuff is good. And
I could just say, my website is mycoachkevin.com.
mycoachkevin.com. That's very simple.
Yeah.
Don't even need to spell it. All right. Well, thank you, Kevin. And you guys, will talk to you next time.